The boardroom on the 42nd floor of a Manhattan skyscraper went silent. Blueprints were spread across the polished table. The skyline of New York City burned orange in the late afternoon sun. Tension wrapped the room like glass. The CEO of Sterling and Hayes Architecture Group slammed his palm on the table. "Enough! Stop pointing fingers. Bring me the real architect who designed this project." Senior architects froze. Project managers stopped breathing. Then, at the back of the room, a woman in a dark blue janitor uniform slowly raised her hand, a mop bucket beside her. ID badge reading, "Maintenance, Night Shift." No degree on the wall, no corner office, just the person nobody ever noticed. And the truth was about to shake the tallest buildings in New York. Her name was Emily Carter. Most people at the firm knew her as the janitor who emptied trash cans, the woman who cleaned conference rooms after late meetings, the quiet night worker no one made eye contact with. But Emily had a secret. Before life knocked her down, Emily dreamed of becoming an architect. She grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, sketching bridges along Lake Erie and drawing houses she wished her family could afford. She got accepted to architecture school. She couldn't afford to attend. Her father got sick. Bills piled up. She took whatever work she could find. She chose dignity over complaining. So she worked nights, cleaning floors in the very world she once hoped to join. But she never stopped designing. Inside her beat-up backpack was a sketchbook full of buildings that didn't exist yet. Museums, towers, homes, structures shaped by wind and light. The world saw a janitor. They had no idea they were walking past a hidden architect. The city woke before dawn. Subways roared beneath streets, taxis honked, coffee shops filled. By 6 a.m., the offices of Sterling and Hayes in Midtown buzzed with activity. That's when Emily finished her shift. She wore worn sneakers from a Walmart clearance rack, a Navy janitor uniform, hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. On her cart, mop spray bottles, trash liners, and a rolled-up brown leather sketchbook wrapped with elastic. No one ever asked what the book was. They assumed coupons or grocery lists. But it held her entire future. One night around 2 a.m., Emily walked past the glass-wall design studio. On the center drafting table, she saw the plans for a new San Francisco waterfront development. She paused. Something was wrong. The support beams under the parking structure were misaligned, barely, but enough to cause long-term structural stress near earthquake zones. Her heart pounded. She wasn't supposed to touch anything. She was just maintenance. But she also knew people would one day park their cars there. Families, children, and safety mattered more than rules. So she quietly picked up a red drafting pencil and corrected the load distribution. 3 lines changed. That was it. She erased the pencil shavings, put everything back exactly as it was, and went back to mopping the hallway. The next morning, senior engineers stared at the corrected design. They looked at each other, confused. No one confessed. No one asked who fixed it. They simply said, "Good catch." It wasn't their catch. It was hers. Emily kept saving their work without ever signing her name. She corrected ventilation plans for a Houston hospital fire exit routing, for a Miami high-rise glass angle errors on a Chicago riverfront tower, structural load issues in a Seattle bridge concept. She didn't brag. No one thanked her. Every night as New York lights blinked outside the windows, she whispered to herself, "It's okay, as long as the buildings are safe." Posters appeared around the office one morning. American Urban Futures Expo, Washington, D.C., National Competition for Visionary Architecture. The winner would earn national fame. Sterling and Hayes wanted to dominate. Teams panicked. Stress filled the building. Designs looked cold and lifeless. That night, when everyone left, Emily sat alone in the quiet studio. She took out her sketchbook. She drew a tower inspired by the Statue of Liberty's flowing robe, shaped like movement, humility, and light. A building that bowed slightly toward the harbor, welcoming immigrants the way America once welcomed her grandparents. She solved symmetry, airflow, support systems, all in her head. No computer needed. The next morning, a senior architect named Daniel Reeves found the sketchbook. He flipped through the pages. He felt threatened. This wasn't talent. This was brilliance. He did the unforgivable. He removed her name, scanned the pages, submitted them as his design. The firm exploded with praise, news features, awards talk. Everyone celebrated him. Emily continued emptying trash bins while hearing people compliment her building. She didn't argue. She didn't expose him. She simply said, "Truth is slow, but it arrives." During stress testing, small structural inconsistencies appeared, just enough for investors to worry. The CEO, Richard Sterling, called an emergency meeting in the top-floor boardroom overlooking Central Park. Blueprints everywhere. Sweat. Silence. He stared around the table. "Someone in this company is a genius," he said slowly, "and someone else is stealing from them. Bring me the real architect." Faces went pale. Daniel Reeves swallowed hard. No one moved. Then, at the back of the room, holding a mop handle, Emily Carter raised her hand. The janitor, the invisible one, the one they never saw. The room stopped breathing, and this was only the beginning. The boardroom on the 42nd floor had never been so quiet. The air conditioning hummed softly. Outside the windows, traffic crawled along Fifth Avenue. Inside, executives, architects, and managers stared at the one person nobody ever expected to speak. Emily Carter, the janitor. Her hand was raised halfway, not boldly, not dramatically, just enough to say, "It's me." Her eyes were calm, but her fingers trembled slightly around the mop handle. CEO Richard Sterling slowly turned toward her. He didn't laugh. He didn't mock. He didn't dismiss her. He simply asked, "Say that again." Emily swallowed. Her voice was soft but steady. "Sir, I'm the one who designed it." The head architect choked on air. Someone dropped a pen. Daniel Reeves closed his eyes like he'd been hit by a truck. No one spoke. The CEO stood up. He walked slowly toward her, expensive shoes sinking into the plush carpet. He stopped right in front of her. Up close, she looked nothing like the people in this room. No tailored suit, no silk tie, just a uniform with a small bleach stain on the sleeve. But her gaze didn't waver. Richard Sterling folded his arms. "What's your name?" "Emily Carter." "What department do you work in?" She paused, then answered the truth. "Custodial, night shift." Someone at the table whispered, "This is ridiculous." Another muttered, "This is a stunt." Richard ignored them. He pointed at the blueprints spread out on the table. "If you're the real architect, explain this load-bearing alignment." He tapped the page, the precise area the engineering team struggled with. Emily didn't hesitate. She stepped forward. She didn't take the blueprint. She just looked at it once, and then began speaking like she'd lived inside the structure. She explained the torsional rotation in high winds over New York Harbor, how the building's slight bow reduces crosswind sway, emergency stairwell placement for evacuation speed, reinforced supports disguised inside aesthetic curves, how natural light would move through glass across seasons. She didn't speak like someone guessing. She spoke like the building was her child. The room shifted. Phones stopped buzzing. Paper stopped moving. Every staff member slowly leaned forward. Emily pointed gently to the corner of the blueprint. "And here, the calculation is wrong. That's why the stress tests failed." Richard blinked. "What calculation?" She took a pencil and adjusted one line of math. Just one. Not a speech, not a performance, just truth. The head structural engineer grabbed the paper, recalculated in silence, and then looked up, face pale. "She's right, completely, perfectly, undeniably." All eyes turned toward Daniel Reeves. He looked like the floor had disappeared beneath him. Richard's voice lowered. "Daniel, where did this design really come from?" His mouth opened. Nothing came out. He tried again. I found sketches. They were in the studio. I assumed they were rough drafts from one of our interns, and Emily spoke gently. You found them in my sketchbook. He froze. You could almost hear his heartbeat. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't loud. She just told the truth like it weighed nothing. You removed my name, she continued quietly. You scanned the pages. You presented my work as yours. Daniel's lips trembled. People who once admired him shifted away in their chairs, like dishonesty was contagious. He whispered, I didn't know you were janitorial staff. The room winced. There it was, the assumption, the arrogance, the belief that brilliance only lives in suits. Richard Sterling didn't shout. Powerful men do not need volume. He turned to Emily. How long have you worked here? 3 years. How long have you been correcting my company's mistakes? She took a slow breath. About the same. Murmurs swept the room. She continued, almost apologetically. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. Buildings hold lives inside them. Children, families, nurses, teachers. I just fixed what I could during my shift. There it was, again. Not ego, not anger, just responsibility. Richard looked right at Daniel. You're suspended. Effective immediately. Daniel's face collapsed. Security stepped forward without being asked. No one felt sorry for him, because they all knew, deep down, that he never had the mind Emily had. He only had the position, and he abused it. Richard turned back to Emily. Why didn't you ever come to me? Emily smiled sadly. I clean bathrooms, sir. People don't usually see past that. Silence hit the room harder than yelling ever could. Her words weren't bitter. They were just real. The CEO glanced at the window, at the skyline full of towers built by names history will never remember. Then he said the words that would change her life forever. Emily Carter, you're not a janitor anymore. No one moved. He pointed to the head of human resources. Prepare a new contract today. Title, lead concept architect. Office on this floor. Full salary, full benefits. Gasps broke around the room. Emily's hand covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes but refused to fall. She whispered, Sir, is this real? Richard nodded. Your work will never be hidden again. He paused, then added one final sentence. Not loud, but powerful. And from today forward, no one in this company walks past you without seeing you. Emily didn't collapse. She didn't scream. She simply stood straighter, like a building finally standing on its rightful foundation. The sun over Manhattan looked different the next morning. Or maybe Emily did. For 3 years, she had entered Sterling and Hayes through the service entrance on 47th Street, badge labeled custodial, night shift. She used elevators that workers never noticed, walked hallways where people spoke over her like she wasn't there. Today, security greeted her by name. Good morning, Ms. Carter. Ms. Carter, not ma'am, not hey, not nothing. Her new badge read. The letters didn't even look real at first. She traced them with her thumb like they might disappear if she blinked. When the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, she hesitated. Thick carpet, quiet halls, framed awards on the walls she had dusted 100 times. But today, she wasn't carrying a mop bucket. She was carrying her sketchbook. A receptionist led her to a glass office overlooking Central Park. I used to vacuum this one, Emily whispered without thinking. Now it had a desk made of walnut, an ergonomic chair that looked like a sculpture, a nameplate waiting to be slid into place. She touched the window. Yellow cabs moved like ants below. Joggers traced green paths. Steam rose from rooftops. This city had always looked down on her. Now it looked up at something she would build. Richard Sterling stepped in. No audience, no ceremony, just truth. This is yours, he said simply. Emily turned around. I don't know what to say. Say you'll design, he replied. The rest we'll handle together. He set 2 folders on her desk. One was labeled Formal Promotion Package. The other, Carter Tower, Preliminary Approval. Her heart skipped. A building with her last name, not borrowed, not stolen, not hidden under someone else. Hers. News travels fast in corporate buildings. Some employees avoided eye contact, embarrassed they had never noticed her. Others looked angry, threatened, whispering in clusters by coffee machines. "She's just a janitor. This is a publicity stunt. No way she's that good." Jealousy stains cleaner than coffee. But there were others, quiet ones, who walked up to her and said, "I'm glad they finally saw you." An intern nervously knocked on her open door. "Ms. Carter, I always liked your load corrections. I thought we had a ghost engineer." Emily laughed softly. No ghost, just the night shift. For the first time, people asked her opinion instead of asking her to take out the trash. She belonged, not because they let her, but because she had always belonged. That night, Emily stood on her tiny apartment balcony in Queens, city lights blinking like restless stars. She dialed a number stored in muscle memory. "Mom?" Her mother's voice crackled through from Cleveland, Ohio. "Hey, baby, you sound different." Emily took a breath she'd been holding for years. "I got promoted." "Promoted to what? Shift supervisor?" Emily laughed. Not at her mother, but at life. "No, Mom. Lead concept architect. In Manhattan." Silence. Then soft crying. Her mother wasn't loud about joy. She was quiet, like rain that waters everything without asking permission. "I told the world," her mother whispered through tears. "I told them my daughter was born building things." Emily's throat tightened. "I'll fly home this weekend," she said, voice trembling. "I want to tell Dad in person." Her father had passed years before, but promises to the dead still matter. The first project, under her name. The next morning, Emily unwrapped her sketchbook at her new desk. On the first blank page, she wrote, "The Carter Project, New York City." She designed a building that bowed slightly, not from weakness, but from humility, like a person saying thank you to the city that broke and rebuilt them at the same time. She planned community spaces for low-income families, rooftop gardens open to the public sunlight, corridors for people who forgot what warmth felt like, reinforced safety features hidden inside elegant curves. No building of hers would ever ignore the people inside it, because she had once been the person buildings ignored. Richard knocked on the glass wall. "How does it feel?" Emily smiled. "Like I finally put my name on my life." He nodded. "Then build something this city will never forget." Before leaving that evening, Emily walked down to the basement level, past storage rooms, past the laundry machines, past the place nobody visits unless something spills. She unlocked the small supply closet where she used to keep her cart. The mop leaned against the corner. A frayed bucket waited like a loyal dog. She ran her hand along the handle. There was no bitterness in her touch, just gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered into the quiet room, "for keeping me standing until the world was ready." She didn't throw anything away. She simply turned off the light and closed the door for the last time. The plane dipped through clouds over Cleveland, Ohio, the city where Emily's story began long before anyone in Manhattan knew her name. Out the window, she saw rows of small houses, football fields, frozen winter ponds, and the gray outline of factories, the skyline of a place that never pretended to be glamorous, but had raised her with grit. As the wheels touched down, Emily pressed her palm against the glass. "I'm home," she whispered. Not as a janitor finishing a shift, not as a girl who couldn't afford tuition, but as Emily Carter, lead concept architect, a title that still felt fragile and miraculous at the same time. Her childhood home hadn't changed much. White paint peeling in familiar places, wind chimes on the porch, the old mailbox leaning just slightly because her father had promised to fix it, but never got around to it. Her mother opened the door before Emily could knock. No speeches, no dramatic lines, just arms around her, tight, warm, shaking. The hug that forgives every delay, every struggle, every night of coming home exhausted. Inside the living room were picture frames, crocheted blankets, and a worn recliner that still held the shape of her father. Emily sat in it, Not because it was empty, but because it still carried him. "Dad," she whispered into the silence. "I did it. They finally know." She walked past her old elementary school, the library where she photocopied architecture textbooks because she couldn't afford to buy them, and the bridge where she used to sit and draw the city skyline while other kids talked about parties and dances. Back then, she carried dreams no one saw. Now the same streets greeted her like an old friend who always knew she'd come back different. She stopped outside Lincoln High School and went inside. The hallway smelled exactly the same. School cleaner, paper, and teenage chaos. Lockers slammed. Sneakers squeaked. In room 204, Mr. Harris, her former art teacher, was stacking sketch pads. His hair was grayer now, his glasses thicker. But when he looked up and saw her, his face lit like someone had just turned the lights on inside him. "Emily Carter?" he said slowly, as if saying the name of a legend. She laughed. "Yes, sir, it's me." He didn't ask what she did now. He didn't need to. He walked to a filing cabinet, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a thin folder. Inside was one of her first architectural drawings. Edges yellowed, lines careful, hopeful. "I kept this," he said quietly. "I knew someone, someday, would need to see you were always going to become what you are now." Tears blurred her vision. All those years, she thought no one saw her. Someone did. Not everyone welcomed her with warmth. At a local grocery store, old classmates recognized her. Some said, "Wow, look at you now." But others murmured, "She got lucky. Must have been connections. She was just the janitor in New York, right?" Those words didn't sting like before. They slid past her like rain on glass. Because she finally knew the truth. She wasn't lucky. She worked quietly when no one watched. She learned when nobody taught. She stood back up every time life shoved her down. Luck is random. What she had was earned. Before leaving Cleveland, Emily went to the cemetery where her father rested beneath a maple tree. Winter branches rattled in the wind. She brushed snow from his headstone. "Hey, Dad," she whispered, smiling through tears. "I finally got the office with the view you always talked about." She told him everything, about the CEO, about the stolen sketches, about the moment she raised her hand about the building now carrying their name. Wind swept through the tree as if the world answered in its own language. For the first time, she didn't cry because she missed him. She cried because she knew he would be proud. The return flight landed under the glow of LaGuardia airport lights. She took a taxi across the Queensboro Bridge, Manhattan glittering ahead like a field of stars tied to the earth. This time, she wasn't arriving as invisible labor slipping into the night. The city was waiting for her, waiting for a building with her name, waiting for a woman it once walked past to leave footprints too big to ignore. Tomorrow would be the groundbreaking ceremony. Reporters, cameras, hard hats, and gold shovels. And one woman who used to mop hallways would stand in front of New York and say, "I designed this." But tonight, alone in her apartment, she opened her sketchbook and whispered, "Let's build a future." The pencil touched the page. New York wakes up differently on important days. The city doesn't get louder, it gets focused. On a crisp morning in lower Manhattan, steel barricades lined the construction site where Emily's first official project would rise. News vans parked bumper to bumper, reporters adjusted microphones, drones hovered like patient birds above the crowd. A white banner stretched across the fence. Carter Tower, a community-focused urban landmark. Emily stared at her name, printed taller than she was. For years, her name lived only on time cards and break room schedules. Now it lived on the skyline. A temporary stage faced the crowd. Rows of folding chairs held city officials, investors, engineers, and construction crews wearing neon vests dusted with concrete powder. At the center sat a table with ceremonial gold shovels, the same ones Emily had once wiped down after other people used them. Richard Sterling stepped up to the microphone first. He didn't start with numbers or costs. He started with truth. "Not long ago," he said, "the brightest architect in our company walked our halls unseen." Heads turned toward Emily. She felt their attention like sunlight on her skin, warm, powerful, honest. "Today," Richard continued, "her name is not hidden. It is written into the future of New York City." Applause swept through the crowd. Not polite, not corporate, but human. Richard turned to her. "Emily, the city would like to hear from you." Public speaking had never been her dream. She wasn't trained for spotlights. She had trained for survival, but she walked to the microphone anyway. Wind tugged softly at her hair. Cameras blinked like impatient stars. She took a slow breath. "My name is Emily Carter," she began. "For 3 years, I worked night shift as a janitor at Sterling and Hayes." The crowd quieted, and every night I cleaned offices full of dreams that did not have my name on them. She paused. "I don't stand here today because someone gave me a miracle. I stand here because I refuse to stop learning, even when no one was looking. Workers in the back, concrete laborers, crane operators, electricians, straightened their shoulders. They knew that life." Emily continued, "This tower will not just be glass and steel. It will have free community spaces, public rooftop gardens, study areas for kids who don't have quiet homes, and design that reminds people that they matter, no matter their job title." She looked at the construction crew again. "Every person here matters. The janitor, the engineer, the CEO, the man pouring cement at 3 a.m. Buildings stand because people stand together." Silence. Then applause rolled through the crowd like thunder over the Hudson. A reporter whispered, "That may be the best speech I've ever heard at a groundbreaking." Hard hats went on. Emily slipped on a white helmet labeled Lead Architect. She held the gold shovel. The steel felt cool, heavy, real. Richard counted down. 3, 2, 1. Together they pushed the shovels into fresh soil. Flashbulbs exploded. History quietly began. When she lifted that first scoop of earth, her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of every night she had mopped floors, wondering if life would ever see her. Now the earth itself had moved for her. In Cleveland, her mother watched the live stream on a small TV, tissue pressed against her eyes. In forgotten break rooms across America, janitors paused and whispered, "That could be me." In offices, some people shifted uncomfortably, realizing how many Emilys they had walked past without noticing. A construction worker near the stage nudged his friend. "She used to clean this building, man. Now she's designing one." His friend grinned. "That's America right there." Days turned into weeks. Excavators carved the foundation. Rebar rose like a metallic forest. Concrete trucks lined the street before sunrise. Every evening, Emily walked the site. Boots dusty, safety vest bright, heart full. She checked measurements. She corrected angles. She thanked workers by name. She didn't hide in a distant office. She stood in the dirt. The foreman, Luis Alvarez, shook his head one day and laughed. "You're the only architect I've ever seen who isn't afraid of mud." Emily smiled. "Mud built my life." Slowly, skeleton beams climbed into the sky. Each new floor felt like another chapter, leaving her past further behind. Not erasing it, but honoring it. Tourists stopped to read the sign. Local kids pressed faces to the fence gaps. One little girl tugged her mother's sleeve and asked, "Mom, can girls build buildings?" Her mother pointed at Emily's name on the banner. "They already do." Emily heard it, and that mattered more than any award. The tower was rising. So was she. The conference room on the 32nd floor of Hudson Dynamics headquarters, Manhattan, buzzed with low whispers. Sleek glass walls reflected the New York skyline, and the air carried the tense silence of people waiting for someone to be exposed. At the center of the long walnut table sat Ethan Cole, the CEO, controlled, sharp, unreadable. At the far end sat Olivia Grant, still dressed in her Navy janitor uniform. Her badge still read, Facilities, Night Shift. Yet her presence now felt entirely different. Around them were executives, senior architects, and project managers. The people who had laughed at rumors of a janitor claiming to be an architect. No one was laughing now. Ethan slid a dark leather folder across the table. "Olivia," he said quietly, "what I saw last night, if it's real, it changes everything." The folder stopped in front of her. Inside were photographs of hand-drawn blueprints taken secretly from the maintenance closet. Suspension load equations in the margins, wind tunnel contour, sketches foundation, stress point corrections, and a full revised design of Harbor One Tower, the company's biggest project. The same project the firm had been struggling with for months. The designs were elegant, clean, efficient, better than the firm's official work. One of the senior architects blurted out, "That can't be hers. That level of refinement takes years of—" Olivia interrupted him softly. "I know," she said. "It took me years." The room fell dead silent. Ethan leaned forward. "Explain something to me," he said. "You're a janitor, working nights. So how did you produce this?" The question wasn't cruel. It was curious. Olivia's hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from finally being seen. "I graduated at the top of my class from UC Berkeley College of Environmental Design," she said. "Masters in architecture, specialized in sustainable skyscraper systems. I interned at firms in San Francisco. I studied under professors whose names you know." Several executives exchanged stunned looks. "But after my mom got sick back in Cleveland, Ohio," she continued, "I had to leave interviews, move home, and work whatever job I could. Medical bills don't wait for anyone's dreams." She paused. "So I took a janitor position here. Night shift paid more, and the empty building allowed me to keep designing. Not for praise, not for recognition, but because architecture was the only part of herself she refused to let die." One of the senior architects, Marcus Hale, leaned over the drawings again, now sweating. "These corrections," he muttered. "They solved the load transfer issue we couldn't fix for 6 months." Another executive whispered, "She redesigned the whole tower's wind shear system." Someone else added, "And she did it alone, after mopping floors all night." Every pair of eyes lifted slowly toward Olivia, respect replacing disbelief. Ethan finally spoke again. "You said last night, when I asked who drew these designs," he looked directly at her. "That you did." Olivia nodded once. "Yes, every line." He let the moment stretch. Then he asked the question that froze the room. "Olivia Grant, are you the real architect of Harbor One?" The air felt electric. Olivia didn't look away. "I am," she said. No apology, no hesitation, just truth. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Several realized what this meant. If she was telling the truth, then credit had gone to the wrong people. Promotions had gone to the wrong people. Bonuses had gone to the wrong people. And the firm's greatest design breakthrough belonged to a janitor. Not a single executive spoke. Not a single chair moved. It was as if the entire tower stopped breathing. Ethan stood slowly, not angry, not excited, but certain. "Clear my schedule," he said to his assistant. "All of it." He turned back to Olivia. "We're not done." His voice wasn't cold. It was reverent. The way someone speaks when they finally recognize they are standing in front of brilliance. "From this point forward," he continued, "no one touches the Harbor One plans without Olivia present." Gasps broke across the table. The janitor badge on her shirt suddenly looked absurd, and yet it was still there, a symbol of everything she had been forced to be, and everything she was about to stop being. The morning sunlight poured through the glass facade of Hudson Dynamics headquarters in Manhattan, turning the lobby floor into a mosaic of gold. The city outside roared with taxis and sirens, but inside the tower, another kind of storm was forming. Word had begun to spread. Not officially, not yet, just whispers. First in the elevators, then in the hallways, then across every department Slack channel, text thread, and coffee machine conversation. Did you hear? The CEO called a janitor into the boardroom. No, not just called. Cleared the building afterward. They're saying she designed Harbor One. That can't be true, can it? Employees who had walked past Olivia Grant for months without seeing her were suddenly replaying every memory. The quiet woman pushing the cleaning cart, the mop bucket rolling over marble floors, the headphones in her ears while she scrubbed after-hours conference rooms. Now the question echoed everywhere. Who is she? Really? On the 28th floor, the architecture division was in chaos. Blueprints were spread across tables. Coffee sat untouched. Stress hung heavy in the air. The one who looked the most shaken was Marcus Hale, senior architect, the man whose name was currently printed on the Harbor One project directory. His assistant, Chloe Ramirez, spoke in a low voice. "Marcus, people are saying the CEO asked for the real architect." Marcus clenched his jaw. "That rumor dies today," he snapped. "Do you understand me?" But his hands trembled as he shuffled the drawings, because deep down, he knew. He had seen Ethan Cole's face through the glass hallway as the CEO left the boardroom with Olivia. Not angry, not confused, impressed, and that terrified him. In a smaller executive office, 3 project managers gathered: Neil Parker, Sandra Lee, Tom Bennett. All 3 had signed off on Harbor One plans. All 3 new pieces of Olivia's work had ended up in official revisions without her name attached. Not stolen outright, just borrowed, polished, adjusted, and now it was coming back like a tidal wave. Neil whispered, "What if she has proof?" Sandra swallowed. "What if the CEO believes her?" Tom stared at the floor. "What if he should?" Silence. For the first time, guilt managed to push its way through fear. Meanwhile, Olivia walks the same hallways, newly seen. Olivia stepped out of the boardroom, escorted by Ethan's assistant to a private office for the day. The same hallways she used to mop were now lined with people pretending not to stare. Some with curiosity, some with disbelief, some with envy, and a few with respect. A young intern named Daniel Brooks accidentally caught her eye. He didn't look away in embarrassment like the others. He smiled. "Congratulations," he said softly. "If what they're saying is true, you earned this." Olivia blinked, surprised. "Thank you," she replied. It had been a long time since anyone in this building had spoken to her like she mattered. On the top floor, Ethan Cole stood alone in his office overlooking the Hudson River. He made a single phone call, then another, then 10 more. HR, legal, PR, the board chair. His final words were the same each time. "Yes, schedule it today. Full company briefing." He turned his eyes back to the skyline. A building was only as strong as the truth it was built on, and Hudson Dynamics had, for years, been standing on a lie. That ended now. At exactly 2 p.m., every employee received a company-wide email notification. Mandatory all-staff meeting, main auditorium, 30 minutes. The subject line alone caused hearts to race. Marcus felt sweat prick his neck. Chloe whispered, "They're going to say it, aren't they?" He didn't answer, because he knew. This wasn't just about Harbor One anymore. It was about who really built it, and whether Hudson Dynamics had the courage to admit it. Downstairs, Olivia sat alone. She waited in the temporary office the assistant had placed her in, a space with a window overlooking Midtown. On the desk sat her worn notebook filled with designs, a broken pen wrapped with tape, and the janitor badge she had removed and placed face down. There was no anger on her face, just calm. If today brought recognition, good. If today brought backlash, she had survived worse. but for the first time in years, she felt like she was standing in sunlight rather than cleaning shadows. A knock sounded on the door. The assistant's voice was gentle. "They're ready for you, Olivia." The main auditorium of Hudson Dynamics headquarters filled slowly at first. Then, all at once, rows of leather seats, a massive LED screen glowing blue, the low thunder of hundreds of conversations stacked on top of each other, department heads, designers, accountants, security staff, interns, architects, and janitors. Everyone had been called. Everyone knew this wasn't routine. No product launch, no quarterly update, no motivational speech. This was something else. You could feel it. When Ethan Cole, CEO of Hudson Dynamics, stepped onto the stage, the sound died like a dropped curtain. No microphone feedback, no music, just silence. He scanned the room slowly, as if weighing the gravity of what he was about to say. Behind him, on the large screen, the title appeared in stark white text, Harbor One Project, Authorship Review. The crowd shifted uneasily. Marcus Hale felt his stomach turn to ice. Ethan spoke without theatrics. Calm, clear, unavoidable. Hudson Dynamics was built on innovation, he said, on talent and on trust. He paused. Harbor One is our largest project to date, a tower that will reshape the New York skyline and define our legacy as a firm. A proud murmur rippled through the audience. Then he continued, "Recently, information came to my attention regarding the authorship of core design elements of Harbor One." The murmur died instantly. No one breathed. "I ordered a full internal review." He turned slightly, letting the statement sink in. "That review is now complete." The LED screen changed. Blueprints appeared, not the polished corporate versions. These were different. Hand-drawn notations in pencil recalculated margin numbers, wind shear corrections, foundation load, distribution diagrams, energy efficiency redesigns. Across the drawings, one signature could be seen repeatedly, O. Grant. Whispers erupted like sparks. Ethan didn't raise his voice, yet everyone heard him. "These designs are not the work of our listed senior architect team," he said. The room tilted metaphorically. People felt the truth breaking open. "They are the original work," he continued, "of a member of our night cleaning staff." And then he spoke the words that would be repeated in every corner of the building for years. "Please welcome the real architect of Harbor One, Olivia Grant." The side door opened. Olivia stepped into the light. No designer suit, no polished heels, no practiced corporate smile. Just herself, calm, steady, unpretentious. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then, like a wave shifting direction, people stood, not all at once, not perfectly, but enough to make the rest rise. It wasn't orchestrated, it wasn't performative, it was instinct. Marcus Hale stayed frozen in his seat, unable to stand, throat tight, because respect requires humility, and he'd spent years avoiding both. Olivia stopped center stage beside Ethan. A microphone was offered. She hesitated, then took it. Her voice was soft, but carried. "I came here 2 years ago," she said. "Not as an architect, not with a title. I came here because I needed a job. No drama, just truth. My mother was sick in Cleveland. Bills were high. Life doesn't always wait for your dreams to catch up." Many in the audience lowered their eyes. They knew what that felt like. "So I cleaned your offices," she continued gently. "Your desks, your conference rooms, your hallways." She smiled faintly, and when the building was quiet, I went back to what I loved most, designing. She turned to the screen behind her, to her own drawings magnified to 30 feet high. "I didn't create Harbor One for credit," she said. "I created it because I saw beauty in it, because architecture matters, because cities deserve better." The room was silent again, but it was a different silence. Not shock, reverence. Ethan took the microphone back. "Effective immediately," he said. "The official project authorship records for Harbor One will be corrected." He glanced toward the front rows. where Marcus and the others sat pale and stiff. A separate investigation is underway regarding misattribution of work and ethics violations. Everyone knew exactly who he meant. No names were spoken. None needed to be. He turned back to Olivia. "And effective today," he said, "Olivia Grant is appointed lead architect on Harbor One, with full authority and compensation matching that role." There was no applause cue, but the room exploded anyway. Cheers, claps. Some people wiped their eyes in disbelief. Even security guards at the back were smiling. When the noise finally calmed, Ethan added quietly, "And for those of you who overlooked her because of a uniform," he let the words settle like a lesson. "Remember this moment the next time you think you know someone's worth." He stepped aside, and for the first time in her life, under blazing stage lights in Manhattan, Olivia Grant stood not as a janitor, not as a ghost in the hallways, but as the architect who had changed everything. The meeting dispersed, but the shock lingered like static in the air. People poured into hallways, talking in hurried whispers. Some were inspired. Some were ashamed. A few were terrified. On the 28th floor, Marcus Hale closed his office door and locked it. For years, he had worn confidence like armor. Now it cracked. He stared at the framed awards lining his wall, accolades based on work that had never fully been his. He remembered the first time he saw Olivia's notebook left on a drafting table after hours. Neat sketches, elegant solutions, corrections he'd borrowed and refined to pass off as collaborative team insights. He justified it as guidance, as leadership. Now, stripped bare, it was simply theft. A knock broke through his spiral. It was Chloe Ramirez, his assistant, eyes red but steady. "They're asking for you downstairs," she said quietly. "HR, legal, ethics committee." He swallowed hard. "Chloe, did you know?" She nodded slowly. "I tried to tell you to credit her," she said. "You always said the firm wouldn't take a janitor seriously." The words hit harder than any formal accusation. He straightened his jacket as if dignity could still be worn. But dignity cannot be worn. It must be earned. Meanwhile, Olivia receives a visitor. Olivia sat in her new temporary office, sunlight pouring in like a promise. Papers were stacked. Her badge lay face down, and for the first time she allowed herself a small smile. A knock sounded. She expected HR. Instead, her breath caught. "Mom?" Patricia Grant, wrapped in a warm scarf, stood in the doorway with tears in her eyes. Ethan had arranged transport from Cleveland after hearing Olivia's story. "I heard my baby girl finally let the world see who she really is," Patricia whispered. Olivia hugged her mother tightly, feeling years of strain dissolve. "I didn't do this alone," Olivia said. "Yes, you did," Patricia replied gently. "You carried your dream when nobody else saw it, even while pushing a mop." They sat together, overlooking Manhattan, just a mother and daughter who had weathered storms and arrived at sunrise. Marcus walked into the glass-walled ethics conference room downstairs. No shouting, no humiliation, just accountability. He resigned before proceedings even finished. Not because of corporate pressure, but because he finally understood something Olivia had always known. You cannot build towers on dishonesty. They collapse from the inside long before the outside cracks. As he left the building later that evening, he paused by the janitor's closet, the same closet where he'd once ignored a woman's quiet brilliance. He whispered into the empty space, "I'm sorry," and for the first time in years, he meant it. Weeks passed. Hudson Dynamics changed, visibly. Olivia's name now stood at the top of the Harbor One project directory. Meetings paused for her input. Ideas were requested instead of dismissed. Night shift workers were greeted by name. Her office was moved to the architect's floor. Her old janitor uniform, she folded it neatly at home, not with bitterness, but with respect. It had carried her through survival. Now she walked forward, Construction of Harbor 1 accelerated. Olivia led site visits in Lower Manhattan, boots dusty from rebar and concrete. She spoke to engineers, crane operators, and apprentices with equal respect. She insisted on sustainable energy systems, green rooftop gardens, accessible public space, lower carbon footprint materials, not just a tower to touch the clouds, a tower to serve the people beneath it. Workers smiled when she arrived. She listened. That made her different. One afternoon, Ethan called her to the executive deck. "There's something I'd like you to consider," he said. "Not just leading projects, but shaping the next generation." He slid a folder forward. Director of Emerging Architects Program, Hudson Dynamics Fellowship. A program focused on women in architecture, people from working-class backgrounds, those overlooked because of uniforms, accents, or circumstance. Olivia closed the folder, overwhelmed. "You're asking me," she said, "to open doors I had to break through?" Ethan smiled. "No, I'm asking you to remove the walls entirely." For the first time, she saw the ripple effect of courage. When you step into the light, you don't just free yourself, you light the way for others. 2 years later, the skyline changed. Harbor 1 rose proudly over the Hudson River, glass shimmering like water, terraces overflowing with green, sunlight bending off steel in brilliant arcs. The dedication ceremony filled Battery Park. Crowds gathered, reporters lined barricades, families watched children point upward in wonder. Ethan stepped to the microphone briefly, only to say one sentence. "This tower stands because one woman refused to stop believing in herself." He turned the stage over to her. Olivia stood at the podium, wind teasing her hair, her mother smiling in the front row. "I used to clean offices while everyone slept," she said softly. "I thought my dreams belonged in the dark. I was wrong." She turned toward Harbor 1. "Dreams don't need permission. They need persistence. Your uniform doesn't decide your worth. Your title doesn't define your mind. And the world will only know your light if you stop hiding it." She paused, eyes bright. "If you are tired, unseen, underestimated, keep going. The future is built by people no one is watching yet." The crowd rose to its feet. Some clapped, some cried, some went home, and finally decided to start what they'd been afraid to begin. Moral of the story: never measure someone's potential by their job, clothes, or status. Talent doesn't disappear just because life becomes difficult. Recognition may be delayed, but truth always finds light. Carry your dreams through the dark. The sunrise belongs to those who don't give up. If this story inspired you, don't stop here. Share it with someone who feels unseen. Comment what dream you're still holding on to, and watch the full story to remind yourself the world hasn't met your best version yet. Keep building it.